The Vethkai had been killing worlds for 3,000 years. No one had ever stopped them. No one had ever come close. Commander Sovereign Yeltra stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Consumption. Through the viewing screen, she watched another planet die. Fire covered its surface like a spreading disease. Millions of creatures down there were screaming, running, praying to gods who would not save them. Yeltra felt nothing. This was simply what the Vethkai did. They consumed. They conquered. They moved on. Her ship was alive. All Vethkai warships were living things, massive creatures of bone, muscle, and organic armor. They breathed. They healed. They adapted. This was the secret of Vethkai power. Every weapon used against them only made them stronger. Energy beams? Their hulls learned to absorb the energy and send it back. Missiles? Their skin grew harder until explosions felt like gentle rain. Poison and disease? They ate such things for breakfast. In 3,000 years of war, no species had found a way to kill them permanently. Every trick was learned, every strategy was countered, every enemy was destroyed. Yeltra turned away from the burning world. It would be ash within hours. Her fleet would harvest what resources remained, and then they would move on to the next target. Always forward, always hungry. "Status report," she commanded. Her voice was cold and smooth, like ice sliding over stone. Her second officer, a tall creature named Vethros, bowed his head. "The Melodai homeworld is secured. Their fleet has been completely destroyed. Estimated survivors on the surface, less than 200,000. They will not last the month." "Good. And the next targets?" "The Galactic Union has assembled a defense fleet at the Barrier Nebula, 32 species working together, 800 capital ships, 40 million soldiers." Yeltra almost smiled. Almost. The Galactic Union was a collection of weak species who thought that numbers meant strength. They were wrong. The Vethkai had faced larger fleets before. The result was always the same. "How long until we reach them?" 6 standard days, Commander. Then we will give them 6 days to pray." The fleet moved like a swarm of nightmares through the dark spaces between stars. 12,000 ships, each one a living weapon. They did not need supply lines. They did not need rest. They fed on the matter of space itself, growing stronger with each passing day. By the time they reached the Barrier Nebula, they would be even more powerful than before. The Galactic Union's fleet was waiting for them. Yeltra had to admit, it was an impressive sight. Ships of every shape and size filled the space ahead. Crystal vessels from the Vren Collective, metal warships from the Keth Empire, sleek fighters from a dozen other species. They had positioned themselves well, using the nebula's gases to hide their numbers and mask their movements. It would not matter. "All ships," Yeltra commanded, her voice broadcasting to every vessel in her fleet, "begin the harvest." The battle lasted 6 hours. For the first hour, the Union forces fought brilliantly. They used the nebula to launch surprise attacks. They coordinated their fire to strike weak points. They even managed to destroy a few Vethkai scout ships. But then the adaptation began. The Vethkai ships analyzed every weapon, every tactic, every strategy. Their living hulls shifted and changed. Within 2 hours, energy weapons were useless. Within 3 hours, missiles were being caught and consumed. Within 4 hours, the Union's coordination was broken as the Vethkai jammed their communications. By the 5th hour, it was no longer a battle. It was a slaughter. Ships exploded by the hundreds. Escape pods were hunted down and destroyed. Surrender signals were ignored. The Vethkai did not take prisoners. They did not negotiate. They only consumed. When the 6th hour ended, the Barrier Nebula was filled with wreckage and bodies. 800 Union ships had been reduced to less than 50 survivors, fleeing in all directions. 40 million soldiers were dead. The Vethkai had lost nothing of importance. Yeltra watched the survivors run. She could have chased them. She could have killed every last one. But she let them go. Let them spread the word. Let them tell the galaxy what was coming. Fear was a weapon, too, and the Vethkai knew how to use it. "Commander," Vethros said, "our scouts have completed their survey of the next sector. 3 inhabited systems remain before we reach the edge of explored space. And beyond that, a small system, 8 planets. One of them supports intelligent life. They call themselves humans." Yelthra had never heard the word before. "Tell me about them." "Primitive species. They have only been traveling between stars for about 100 years. Their technology is basic. Their military is small. Our analysts estimate that conquering their entire civilization would take less than 2 standard days." "Any special abilities? Adaptations we should prepare for?" "None, Commander. They are soft creatures. No natural armor. No special senses. They cannot survive in vacuum. They cannot regenerate. They are ordinary." Yelthra nodded slowly. After 3,000 years of conquest, very few things surprised her anymore. But there was something strange about facing a species with no advantages at all. Most creatures had something: speed, strength, intelligence, technology. These humans seemed to have nothing. "Perhaps they will surrender quickly," she said. "It would save time." "Perhaps," Vethros agreed. "Although our psychological profiles suggest they may be unusually aggressive for such a weak species, they have a history of fighting among themselves." "Fighting among themselves?" Yelthra made a sound that might have been laughter. "Then they will be divided when we arrive. Even better." She turned back to the viewing screen. Somewhere out there, past the burning remains of the Galactic Union's fleet, a small blue planet was waiting. Its people did not know that death was coming. They were living their ordinary lives, dreaming their ordinary dreams. Soon, those dreams would end. "Set course for the human systems," Yelthra commanded. "We will finish this quickly." The fleet moved forward, hungry and unstoppable. In 9 days, they would reach humanity. In 9 days, another species would fall. At least, that was the plan. The Vethkai Vanguard entered the Proxima Centauri system on a Tuesday morning. 300 ships, each one larger than a mountain, slid out of faster-than-light travel and began scanning for targets. What they found was almost disappointing: a mining colony. 40,000 humans living in metal boxes floating around a dim red star. Their biggest structure was a processing plant that broke apart asteroids for minerals. Their defenses consisted of a few old laser turrets and one small warship that looked like it might fall apart if someone sneezed on it. The warship's name was painted on its side in white letters: UN Stubborn. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her ship and watched 300 monsters appear in her sky. She was 47 years old. She had served in the United Earth Navy for 25 years. She had survived 2 border conflicts, 1 pirate raid, and a terrible divorce. None of that had prepared her for this. "Captain," her sensor officer said, his voice shaking, I'm counting 300 hostile contacts. They match the description of Vethkai warships from the Union's warning message." The warning had arrived 2 days ago. A desperate transmission from the Galactic Union, telling humanity that an unstoppable enemy was coming. Most people on Earth had not believed it. The message seemed too strange, too much like a bad movie. But Captain Vasquez had believed it. She had looked at the images of those organic ships and felt something cold settle in her stomach. Now those ships were here. "What are our orders, Captain?" her first officer asked. Vasquez looked at her crew, 72 people. Most of them were young, kids fresh out of training who had been assigned to this quiet posting because nothing ever happened at Proxima. They were scared. She could see it in their eyes, in the way they gripped their consoles. They were looking to her for hope. She had none to give them. "Our orders are to protect the colony," she said. "Sound general quarters, all weapons online, and get me a channel to the colony administrator." The next few minutes were chaos. The colony's transports began emergency launch procedures. 40,000 people were trying to crowd onto ships designed for a few hundred. Children were crying. Families were being separated. Some people were fighting for seats while others were giving up theirs. It was ugly and beautiful and heartbreaking all at once. The Stubborn positioned herself between the colony and the approaching fleet. It was like a mouse standing in front of a pack of wolves. Ridiculous, pointless, suicidal. Vasquez did it anyway. "Captain," her communications officer said, "the lead enemy ship is hailing us." "Put it through." The screen flickered, and Vasquez found herself looking at Sovereign Yelthra for the first time. The Vethkai commander was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like stone. Her eyes were completely black, no whites, no pupils, just endless darkness. "Human vessel," Yelthra said. "You are in our path. Move aside and we will grant you a quick death. Resist and we will make your end educational." Vasquez stared at the alien face. Behind her, she could hear her crew breathing. Some of them were praying. Some of them were crying quietly. All of them were waiting. "My name is Captain Elena Vasquez," she said, "and I have a counteroffer. Turn your fleet around and leave this system. If you don't, I will personally make you regret it." There was a long pause. Then Yelthra made a sound that might have been laughter. "You have one ship. I have 300. Your vessel is metal and circuits. Mine are living weapons that have destroyed civilizations. What could you possibly do to make me regret anything?" Vasquez smiled. It was not a happy smile. "Guess you'll find out." She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. They were all looking at her like she had lost her mind. Maybe she had. "Listen to me," she said. "We are not going to win this fight. We all know that. But those transports need time to escape. Every second we buy them is a second those 40,000 people get to live. Every second matters." She paused, looking at each face in turn. "I'm not ordering any of you to die with me. Anyone who wants to leave can take the escape pods now. No shame, no judgment. You have families, you have futures. I won't take those from you." No one moved. "Captain," her first officer said quietly, "we're not going anywhere." Vasquez felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them away. "Then let's give these bastards something to remember." The Stubborn's engines roared to life. The old frigate shot forward like a bullet, heading straight for the Vethkai command ship. Every weapon on the ship began firing. Lasers, missiles, kinetic rounds, everything they had. It was like throwing pebbles at a hurricane. But they did not stop. Alarms screamed as enemy fire tore into the Stubborn. Hull breaches opened on 3 decks. The engine room caught fire. The shields failed in the first 10 seconds. But the ship kept going, kept fighting, kept pushing forward. Vasquez locked the navigation on a collision course with the command ship's sensor cluster, its eyes and ears. If she could blind it, even for a few minutes, the transports might have a chance. "All hands," she announced over the intercom. "It has been an honor serving with you. Transmit all sensor data to Earth. Let them know what we learned. Let them know we didn't run." The transmission went out. Every scan, every reading, every piece of information about the Vethkai ships, all of it racing toward Earth at the speed of light. The Stubborn hit the command ship at full speed. The explosion was small compared to the enemy fleet. A brief flash of light, a spray of debris, and then nothing. 72 humans died in an instant. The UEN Stubborn ceased to exist, but the sensor cluster was destroyed. The command ship was blinded, and in the confusion that followed, every single colony transport jumped to safety. 40,000 humans lived because 72 refused to run. Yelthra stood in the darkness of her blinded bridge, waiting for repairs to complete. She felt something she had not felt in centuries. Not fear, not anger. Something stranger. Confusion. The human ship had possessed no chance of victory. None. Any logical species would have fled. Any rational creature would have chosen survival, but these humans had charged directly at her, knowing they would die, simply to save others. It made no sense. "Commander," Vethros said, "shall we pursue the fleeing transports?" Yelthra considered it. Then she shook her head. "No, we continue to Earth. These miners are irrelevant." But as the fleet moved on, she could not stop thinking about that tiny ship, the Stubborn. What kind of species named their warship after the refusal to give up? What kind of species threw their lives away for strangers? She had no answers. But somewhere deep inside, in a place she would never acknowledge, Sovereign Yelthra felt the first small seed of doubt. Earth received the Stubborn's final transmission 6 hours after Captain Vasquez died. The data spread through military networks like wildfire. Within a day, every admiral, every general, every soldier knew what was coming. 12,000 alien warships. Living weapons that adapted to everything. An enemy that had destroyed entire civilizations without breaking a sweat. Humanity had 9 days to prepare. Admiral Marcus Chen stood in the war room beneath Geneva, surrounded by screens showing fleet positions, resource charts, and casualty projections. The math was simple and terrible. Earth's entire defense force consisted of 212 warships. Most of them were small frigates and destroyers. Against 12,000 Vethkai vessels, they would last maybe an hour. "We cannot win a straight fight," Chen said to the assembled commanders. "Everyone in this room knows that, so we will not fight a straight fight." He pressed a button, and the main screen changed to show a tactical map of the solar system. "I am ordering the fleet to scatter. Every ship will hide, behind moons, inside asteroid fields, in the shadow of planets. You will stay hidden until I give the signal. When that signal comes, you will attack in coordinated strikes. Hit and run. Never stay in one place long enough to be caught." A young captain raised her hand. "Sir, what about you?" Chen smiled. It was the smile of a man who had already made peace with death. "I will be staying at the system's edge, alone." The room went silent. "The enemy needs to believe they've won. They need to think our fleet has been destroyed or has fled. That means someone has to stand in their way and die. I have volunteered for that honor." He gestured to the screen, which now showed a single, massive ship. It was ugly, a brutal rectangle of metal and armor, 3 kilometers long, covered in weapons and sensor dishes. "This is the UEN Thermopylae, our first and only dreadnought. She was designed to take punishment and keep fighting. Her hull is pure tungsten and ceramic composite. Her reactor can power a small city. She carries no energy weapons, only kinetic mass drivers and nuclear warheads, things that cannot be adapted against easily." Chen looked at the faces around him. These were good people, brave people. They deserved the truth. "I do not expect to survive this, but I intend to buy you time. Days, if possible. Every day I hold them is another day for Earth to prepare. Another day for our ships to find their hiding spots. Another day for civilians to evacuate." He straightened his uniform. "I need volunteers. 8,000 crew for the Thermopylae. I will accept no one with young children. No one who is the last of their family line. This is a one-way trip. And I want everyone who comes with me to know exactly what they're signing up for." 20,000 people volunteered within the hour. 7 days later, the Thermopylae waited alone at the edge of the solar system. Her crew had spent the week transforming the space around them into a trap. Millions of nuclear mines hidden in the dark waiting for a signal. It was humanity's biggest secret weapon, not the mines themselves, but the fact that no one would expect them. The Vethkai arrived on schedule. 12,000 ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel, spreading across Chen's view screen like a plague of locusts. At the center of the formation was the Eternal Consumption, Yelthra's flagship, now repaired and hungry for revenge. A communication request blinked on Chen's console. He answered it. Yelthra's black eyes stared at him through the screen. Human Commander, I am Sovereign Yelthra of the Vethkai Dominion. You are alone against my fleet. Surely you understand that resistance is pointless. Chen leaned back in his chair. He was 63 years old. He had gray hair, tired eyes, and the calm expression of a man who had already let go of fear. My name is Admiral Marcus Chen, and I have a message for you. Speak. You will go no further. He cut the transmission. Yelthra stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Then she began to laugh. It was a cold, hollow sound. Destroy him, she ordered. Send 500 ships. I want that vessel turned to atoms. The attack force surged forward. 500 living nightmares against one metal box. The outcome seemed obvious. The Vethkai commanders were already celebrating their easy victory. Then Chen pressed the button. The nuclear mines activated simultaneously. 12,000 explosions lit up the darkness, a wall of fire and radiation that tore through the Vethkai formation. Ships that had survived thousands of battles suddenly found themselves caught in a trap they had never expected. Their adaptive armor could handle weapons fire. It could not handle being surrounded by nuclear fire on all sides. 300 ships died instantly. 200 more were crippled. Their organic systems burned and bleeding. The survivors scattered in confusion, and through the chaos, the Thermopylae charged forward. Chen's ship was not fast. She was not graceful, but she was tough. Enemy fire hammered her hull, and she kept coming. Organic tentacles tried to grab her, and her mass drivers tore them apart. Vethkai vessels tried to ram her, and she simply pushed through them, leaving wreckage in her wake. The dreadnought was built for one purpose, to take punishment and keep fighting, and that was exactly what she did. All batteries fire at will, Chen commanded. Target their command ships. Make them feel every hit. The Thermopylae's weapons roared. Nuclear warheads screamed toward the Vethkai fleet. Mass driver rounds, simple chunks of metal accelerated to impossible speeds, punched through organic armor like bullets through paper. The Vethkai could adapt to many things, but they could not adapt to basic physics. A heavy object moving very fast would always cause damage. For 3 hours, the Thermopylae fought alone against the entire fleet. She killed over 200 ships. She crippled hundreds more. Her armor was shredded. Her decks were on fire. A quarter of her crew was dead. But she did not fall. Finally, Chen ordered a retreat. The Thermopylae limped into the asteroid belt, hiding among the rocks. The Vethkai pursued, but their damaged sensors could not track her properly. Every time they found her, she would fight, kill a few more ships, and vanish again. Yelthra screamed orders at her commanders. Find that ship, kill it, destroy it completely. But the Thermopylae was like a ghost, appearing, striking, disappearing. Her crew knew these asteroids. They knew every rock, every shadow, every hiding spot. This was their home territory. The hunt had begun, and across the solar system, 211 human warships waited in the darkness, watching, learning, and preparing for their moment to strike. Admiral Chen looked at the damage reports and smiled. They had expected to survive hours. They had survived 3 days. This was just the beginning. 19 days. That was how long the Thermopylae survived. 19 days of running, hiding, fighting, and dying. 19 days of impossible resistance against an enemy that should have killed them in hours. 19 days that changed everything. Admiral Chen had stopped sleeping on day 4. There was no time. Every hour brought new attacks, new emergencies, new deaths. His ship was falling apart around him. The once proud dreadnought was now a patchwork of emergency repairs and desperate fixes. Entire sections were open to space. The engines wheezed like dying animals. Half the weapons were offline, but the Thermopylae kept fighting. The crew had shrunk from 8,000 to less than 400. Every day, more people died. Some were killed by enemy fire. Others died from wounds that could not be treated with their limited medical supplies. A few simply gave out, their bodies breaking down from exhaustion and stress. Chen knew all their names. He made sure of that. Every person who died on his ship deserved to be remembered as more than a number. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "enemy patrol detected. 3 ships heading this way. They'll spot us in about 15 minutes. Chen nodded slowly. His face was gray with exhaustion. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the armrests of his chair. But his voice was steady. "Signal the Valiant and the Defiant. Tell them it's time." The Valiant and the Defiant were 2 small frigates from Earth's scattered fleet. They had been following the Vethkai patrol for hours, waiting for this moment. When the enemy ships came around a large asteroid, the frigates were waiting. The battle lasted 4 minutes. Both frigates were destroyed. All hands lost. But they took 2 Vethkai ships with them. And more importantly, they transmitted detailed scans of the enemy's current adaptation patterns back to the Thermopylae. This was how humanity fought the long hunt. Every engagement was a sacrifice. Every death was a lesson. Human ships would emerge from hiding, attack with everything they had, and then die. But not before sending their data to the Thermopylae. Slowly, over 19 days, Admiral Chen assembled the most complete picture of Vethkai biology that any species had ever created. He learned that their ships needed to feed every 72 hours. He learned that their adaptation process required at least 6 hours to complete. He learned that their communication system used a specific frequency that could be jammed. He learned 100 small details, each one paid for in human lives. Sovereign Yelthra was losing her mind. She had never experienced anything like this. The Vethkai had conquered 17 civilizations. Every single one had behaved logically. They fought until they realized they could not win, and then they surrendered or fled. This made sense. This was how survival worked. You did not throw your life away for nothing, but humans did not behave logically. Every time she thought she had trapped the Thermopylae, it escaped. Every time she sent ships to hunt the hidden human fleet, they were ambushed by suicide attacks. Her commanders were becoming afraid, not of losing, but of the humans themselves. Creatures that did not fear death were terrifying in a way that superior firepower could not match. "Why do they keep fighting?" Yelthra demanded during a strategy meeting. "They cannot win. They must know they cannot win. So why do they not surrender?" Her advisors had no answers. On day 15, something changed. A small human shuttle appeared near the Vethkai fleet. It was unarmed, a simple civilian transport. It broadcast a message on all frequencies. "My name is Maria Santos. I am a school teacher from Buenos Aires. I have no weapons. I am not here to fight. I am here to ask you a question." Yelthra watched the shuttle with suspicion. "This is a trick." "Commander," one of her advisors said, "the shuttle is genuinely unarmed. There are no explosives on board. It is just a woman in a small ship." Against her better judgment, Yelthra opened a communication channel. "Speak, human. Ask your question." Maria Santos appeared on the screen. She was perhaps 50 years old, with kind eyes and gray-streaked hair. She looked like someone's grandmother. She looked utterly harmless. "I want to know why you do this," Maria said. "Why do you destroy worlds? Why do you kill so many people? What do you gain from all this death?" Yelthra stared at her. No one had ever asked her that question before. "We are Vethkai," she said finally. "We consume. It is our nature." "But is it your choice?" The question hung in the air. Yelthra felt something strange stirring in her chest, something that might have been doubt or anger, or perhaps something she had no name for. "Destroy that shuttle," she commanded. Maria Santos died without fear. Her final transmission, broadcast to all of humanity, was simple. They can be questioned. They are not gods. They are just afraid. 4 days later, the Thermopylae stopped running. Admiral Chen had studied the data. He had analyzed every scan, every reading, every piece of information bought with human blood. And he had found something, a weakness so fundamental that the Vethkai themselves did not know it existed. Their ships were connected, not just through communication, but through biology. They shared genetic information, adaptation patterns, survival instincts. It was what made them so strong, a fleet that learned together, grew together, evolved together. But it was also a vulnerability. If you could introduce something into that network, something toxic, something destructive, it would spread to every ship in the fleet. The scientists on Earth had been working on this possibility since day one. They called it Project Achilles, an antimatter weapon designed to react specifically with Vethkai biology, creating a cascade effect that would turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The weapon was installed on the Thermopylae. It was untested. The scientists gave it a 90% chance of killing everyone on the ship when it activated. Admiral Chen called a meeting of his surviving crew. 400 people gathered in the damaged cargo bay, the only space large enough to hold them all. They were exhausted, wounded, half-starved. Many of them were wrapped in bandages. Some could barely stand. Chen looked at them with pride he could not put into words. "We have a weapon," he said. "It might work. It might kill the entire Vethkai fleet. But it will probably kill us too." He paused, letting the words sink in. "I am not going to order you to use it. This has to be a choice. We vote. Majority wins. If you want to try to escape, to run, to hide, to survive, I will respect that decision." The vote was unanimous. Chen smiled for the first time in 19 days. "Then let's end this." The Thermopylae sent one final transmission to the Vethkai flagship. "We don't know how to surrender. Come teach us." Yelthra assembled her entire fleet, 9,000 ships that had survived the long hunt, and personally led them toward the wounded dreadnought. She was tired of this chase, tired of these impossible humans. It was time to finish this. She found the Thermopylae drifting near Earth's moon, engines cold, weapons silent. It looked dead. "Scan for traps," she commanded. "The scans show nothing, Commander. The ship appears to be disabled." Yelthra knew it was a trap. She knew it in her bones. But she no longer cared. She wanted this ship destroyed. She wanted to watch it burn. "All ships, attack formation. Destroy that vessel completely. Leave nothing behind." 9,000 Vethkai warships closed in for the kill. Admiral Chen watched them come. He held the activation device in his hand, a simple button that would end everything. "It's been an honor," he said to his crew. Then he pressed the button. The universe held its breath. For one frozen moment, nothing happened. The button was pressed. The weapon was activated. And then, light. Project Achilles was not a bomb in the traditional sense. It did not explode. Instead, it released a wave of modified antimatter particles, particles specifically designed to react with the exotic matter that powered Vethkai biology. The scientists had called it a cascade trigger. They had hoped it would work. They had not truly believed it would. It worked. The wave passed through the first ring of Vethkai ships, and they began to die from the inside. Their living systems turned against themselves. Organic reactors overloaded. Adaptive armor became brittle and cracked. Neural networks that had evolved over millions of years suddenly forgot how to function. But the true horror came next. The Vethkai fleet was connected. Every ship shared biological information with every other ship. This network, their greatest advantage, became the highway for their destruction. The cascade effect spread from ship to ship, jumping through their communication links, racing through their genetic bonds. Within seconds, it had reached every vessel in the formation. Yelthra watched her fleet die around her. Ships that had conquered worlds crumbled like dead leaves. Warriors who had never known defeat screamed as their own bodies betrayed them. The darkness of space filled with the light of dying titans, thousands of explosions, thousands of deaths, all happening at once. On the bridge of the eternal consumption, Yelthra felt the cascade hit her own vessel. Warning systems screamed. The walls around her began to bleed. The floor beneath her feet became soft and unstable. She had 43 seconds to understand what was happening. 43 seconds to realize that everything she had believed was wrong. "Impossible," she whispered. "This is impossible." But it was happening. The unstoppable Vethkai dominion, the empire that had ruled the stars for 3,000 years, was ending. Not with a grand battle, not with a worthy foe, but because a small primitive species had refused to accept the obvious. In her final moment, Sovereign Yelthra thought of Captain Vasquez. She thought of the stubborn. She thought of a teacher named Maria Santos, who had flown unarmed into the heart of the enemy fleet just to ask a question. She finally understood. The humans had not been fighting to win. They had been fighting because fighting was what they did, because surrender was not in their nature, because they would rather die standing than live kneeling. It was not logical, it was not rational, it was terrifying. The eternal consumption died with its commander. 6,000 Vethkai ships died with it. The cascade burned through the fleet like fire through dry wood, leaving nothing but wreckage and silence. When it was over, less than 3,000 ships remained, scattered, leaderless, broken. They fled into deep space, running from the small blue planet that had destroyed everything they were. The Thermopylae survived. No one could explain how. The cascade should have killed everyone on board. Instead, the ship emerged from the light battered and broken, but somehow still intact. Perhaps the antimatter had dissipated before reaching them. Perhaps the universe simply decided that some stories deserved a better ending. Admiral Chen was found at his command chair. He was unconscious, his body pushed beyond all reasonable limits. The doctors said he had suffered 3 minor heart attacks during the final battle. His body had simply refused to let him die before his mission was complete. He woke up 2 days later in a hospital bed on Earth. His first words were, "Did it work?" The nurse who was checking his vitals started crying. "Yes, Admiral, it worked." Chen closed his eyes. For the first time in weeks, he slept peacefully. Of the Thermopylae's original crew of 8,000, 87 survived. They became the most celebrated heroes in human history. Schools were named after them. Holidays were created in their honor. Children across the world learned their stories. But the survivors themselves rarely talked about what they had done. When asked, they usually said the same thing. "We just did what needed to be done. Anyone would have." This was not true. Not anyone would have. That was the whole point. 1 month after the battle, the Galactic Union sent a delegation to Earth. 32 species, representing billions of beings across the galaxy. They came with gifts, with offers of technology, with proposals for alliances and treaties. But mostly, they came with questions. The main hall of the United Nations was filled with aliens of every shape and size. They sat in silence as a young human woman walked to the podium. Her name was Sarah Vasquez. She was 24 years old. Her mother had been Captain Elena Vasquez of the UN Stubborn. "You want to know how we won?" Sarah said. "That's why you're here. You want to understand what made us different." She looked out at the sea of alien faces. "The truth is simple. You were taught that survival is the most important thing, that a species exists to continue existing, that death is the ultimate failure." She paused. "We were taught something different. We were taught that some things are worth dying for, that protecting others, even strangers, even people you've never met, matters more than living another day." that the measure of a life is not how long it lasts, but what you do with it. The hall was completely silent. The Vethakai understood survival. They were experts at it. 3,000 years of conquering, consuming, adapting, all in the name of staying alive. But they never understood sacrifice. They could not imagine a species that would choose death over surrender. It broke their calculations. It shattered their predictions. Sarah took a deep breath. You want to know the difference between us and you? It's not our technology. It's not our weapons. It's not our biology. The difference is that when the darkness came, you ran. We stayed. She stepped back from the podium. That's all. That's the only secret. We stayed. The Galactic Union offered humanity everything: territory, resources, technology that would have taken centuries to develop on their own, membership in the galactic community, a seat at the table of civilizations. Humanity accepted. But something had changed in the galaxy. The species that had cowered before the Vethakai began to straighten their backs. The civilizations that had surrendered began to rebuild. For the first time in 3,000 years, hope was spreading. Because somewhere out there, a small planet full of strange, stubborn, impossible creatures had looked at the end of the world and said no. The story spread. It reached every corner of the galaxy. It was told in languages humanity had never heard, on planets humanity had never seen. The details changed with each telling, but the core remained the same. When the unstoppable force met the immovable object won. Not because it was stronger, not because it was smarter, but because it refused to move. Admiral Marcus Chen lived for another 12 years. He spent most of them teaching at the Naval Academy, sharing his experiences with the next generation of officers. He never fully recovered from his injuries, but he never complained. I got more years than I expected, he would say. Everything else is a gift. He died peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by family and friends. His last words were to his granddaughter, "Never forget what we can do when we stand together." The UEN Thermopylae was repaired and returned to service. She became the flagship of the human fleet, a symbol of everything humanity had achieved. On her bridge, a small plaque was installed. In memory of those who stood when others ran. We will remember. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 different worlds, beings of every species looked up at the stars and wondered. If humans could do the impossible once, what else might they do? The universe was about to find out.